Hey everybody. I wasn't planning on doing a video today, but I've been thinking about this whole Valve announcement that just came out. So basically, in case you're just stumbling across this, Valve, the developer of Counter-Strike Global Offensive, have decided to limit the coach's involvement in the game. And so it's a five-player team, basically, that we're talking about. And then you have a sixth man, a coach. And Valve felt like the sixth man was becoming too much of a player because some teams were using him as an in-game leader instead of just having him as a cheerleader or a manager or even a coach, but, a coach that's only involved in pauses, etc. I mean, the explanation that has just come out, basically, that was, I guess, revealed by Hiko. He got the email live, said it live on stream. Then HLTV went ahead and put together an article and gave us the full rundown. And the explanation, in case you don't know it, is with unrestricted communication with their players, coaches can currently function as a sixth player and not solely as a source of guidance or training. Activities such as keeping track of the economy, calling plays, and general situational awareness are important components of CS gameplay. If a person is performing these actions, we consider them a player. Since the goal of our events is to identify the best five-player CS team that exhibit the best combination of all CS skills, the current participation of coaches in the game is not compatible with that goal. To address this problem, future Valve-sponsored events, meaning majors, minors, will enforce the following coaching rules. And actually, that's a little fuzzy, right? Future Valve-sponsored events. I mean, if you really want to get down to the brass tacks of it all, the fact is, Valve are the developers of the game. They're giving tournament organizers the IP to use their game. You could maybe argue that they're in a roundabout way sponsoring the event that way as well by allowing a tournament organizer to use their game, in which case a tournament organizer would have to comply with these rules if they wanted to use CSGO. All right, we'll get to that in a minute, but during a match, the coach may only communicate with the players during warm-up at the beginning of the game, halftime, after 15 rounds, basically. There's a break there. The coach can communicate then, or during one of 4 30-second timeouts that the coach or player can call. Now, I'm assuming that this 30-second timeout, these 4 30-second timeouts, are basically breaking down the now standard 2-minute timeout that a team has. Once per map, they can call a 2-minute timeout. Depends on which side they want to use it. But they get a 2-minute timeout where they can sit, and basically talk over tactics and figure out what they need to do to win. What I'm thinking is that Valve have just split that 2-minute timeout into 4 30-second timeouts. And so you might lose the 2-minute timeout, but you gain the 4 30-second timeouts as you use them wherever you want. You can use them a little bit more often. Right. So something to consider there. I'm assuming that both teams get this basically 2-minute timeout as well. So obviously, third-party events can use whatever rules they want. But if you want to align your events with ours, then we recommend using this coaching rule. Ito Magal. So Ito is one of the head developers at Valve. Basically, the way that the devs work, it's a flat management structure. It's a flat system. Everybody's kind of on the same level. But I think that Ito kind of has seniority there. He's been working on CS basically for quite some time. And so he's kind of like heading the project from what I understand. I mean, they won't say if anybody's a chief or not, but I think that Ito is the chief, or at least in my head, he's the chief of the CS devs. So he's going ahead and say this. So, I mean, he obviously kind of like touches on my point there. The Valve IP, the CSGO IP, if you're using it, you're kind of indirectly sponsored by Valve. He says third-party events can do that. But, I mean, the real thing is that you've already seen one tournament organizer kind of come around on that. That's ESL. They've already just decided to change up New York, their next big event. They've changed up the rules there to start enforcing this. I mean, basically what it applies to is a TO who wants to host a major in the future. If you want to host a major in the future, you better start playing ball with Valve if you want to be considered for that major, right? Simple as that. And so Valve right now, they're basically saying, this is our vision for the game. This is how we want the game to be played. You're going to have to comply if you want to have a chance at a major in the future. And so it's that simple, right? So the teams that are affected by this already, I mean, you have quite a few of them. Off the top of your head, you can say Na'Vi, NiP. I mean, those are the big two that really stand out because those teams have really made it their core component to have that in-game leader be their coach. StarX, for one, he's basically been in-game leading for that team for the past 6 months plus. And then you have, NiP. They brought over Threat. Same thing. Obviously, there's other teams like this, Liquid, Mouse Sports, FaZe. I mean, they're listed here on HLTV. But for me, it's like Na'Vi, man. Just thinking about Na'Vi, that's the first team that I think about that are going to get screwed by this. Is just the fact that, well, StarX is the in-game leader. He calls every strat. He's the one who's basically the brain behind the team. And so, right, he is now significantly limited in what he can do. So, yeah. it's like the community so far, it seems like everybody's flipping out about the fact that, this seems to be very sudden, right? That this is an overnight decision taken by Valve, it seems, right? But that's not really the case. What I've been thinking about is, like, where are Valve coming from in this sort of scenario, right? And to me, at the end of the day, what it comes down to is when a major happens or when a big, Valve-sponsored event happens, that's essentially marketing for them, right? They're saying, we want to show our game to as many people as possible so that perhaps some of those people will come and play CSGO. That's has to be the mindset behind the entire thing, right? That's esports in a nutshell, is that, we're here almost as just, promoters of this developer's game. We happen to love the game, but at the same time, it's a back and forth, right? We're promoting their game. We're showing their game to people who may not know about it, and then perhaps those players will come over and play it. And so the reasoning behind this has to be the fact that, and they've made this clear in the past, right? The devs have said, we want it to be about the 5 players who are in the game, the same way that, our player base basically play the game, which is 5 players on a matchmaking server. One of them may take the lead role, maybe 2, maybe 3. Maybe there isn't one in-game leader. Maybe everybody's calling the shots, right? But they want it to revolve around those 5 players. And the fact that they see that 6th coach player basically, getting more and more involved, even though he isn't actually physically playing the game, he's the one who's calling the shots and keeping track of the economy, all that sort of stuff. That doesn't sit well with them because they want it to be an identical experience. They want, obviously it's not identical if you consider the 64 tick to 128 tick. But if you want 128 tick, there are services that provide that. That's also has to be Valve's reasoning, is if you want 128 tick servers, well, you got Faceit, you got ESCA, you got a few others if you want. You got your own server if you want. You can go and buy your own server if you want to play 128. That has to be the reasoning there. If you're hardcore enough to feel like 128 will make a difference, there's services there. But when it comes down to it, Valve always make decisions based off of what is actually happening in their player base, not the community. It's when they were making the M4 changes, for example, between silenced and A4, it's how many people are using which gun. Okay, there's a lot more people using the silenced version than the A4. How do we get people to use the A4 more? Okay, we decide to nerf the silence a little bit. That brings it back in line a little bit. Okay, now we start to see it get closer to 50-50. Okay, that's interesting, right? Then you actually start to have a bit of a decision between the two. That's the reasoning behind, or that seems to me how they think when it comes to making changes for the game, making changes for the game balance, and trying to just improve the game overall. Is they want to try and make these changes so that they can see it basically take place in the player base, the broad player base, the massive casual player base that CSGO actually has. I mean, what I was thinking about is, we have the vocal community, right? And that vocal community now, Reddit, for example, which I guess is the biggest hub pretty much apart from HLTV, and maybe some others, right? But HLTV, ESEA, Faceit, Counter-Strike Global Offensive, the subreddit Global Offensive. I think that's the main one. It's 400,000 subs, right, to this subreddit. And maybe people are coming that don't even sub, right? They just kind of look and then there you go, they move off to something else. But 400,000 people subbed to Counter-Strike Global Offensive, right? That's a significant number. But when you consider just how many millions of people are playing on a month-to-month basis, Counter-Strike Global Offensive, right? The game, the actual player base, it's huge. It hugely outweighs the actual vocal community that is here on the CSGO subreddit, for example. And so when you're a developer, it seems to me like you have to be very careful about that because you're catering to such a broad audience, to a much bigger audience than the vocal minority that happen to find themselves on the Reddit, that, these kinds of decisions, when they make game decisions, that's what they have to be reasoning off of, right? When it comes to this decision, this is an interesting one because the way that I see it is that Valve have already made it perfectly clear to the players that they don't want the 6th man to be the in-game leader, right? They don't want the coach to be that involved in the game. And they made this months ago, right? They basically made it clear. They even made it so that tournament organizers, who I call TOs, right? Or in general, you call TOs just to save a breath. That TOs, not give PCs, for example, to the coach, that the coach should just be standing there behind the players, if anything, that they shouldn't have their own PC to be able to look in game, etc. They've made it pretty clear, it seems now for quite some time, that the teams shouldn't have that in-game leader be the 6th man. And so I think what happened probably is just that Valve, they said, right, okay, we've given them a few months to adjust. We've made it pretty clear, what our stance is on this, and they haven't changed anything. The players are continuing to build teams around having that 6th man. as the in-game leader, right? Now it's like almost, well, it's not an exception. I mean, there's still more teams that have the in-game leader as part of the 5-man roster than not, but there seems to be more and more teams coming along that are going to that coach as the in-game leader. And again, this is not what Valve wants, right? And so they've been saying this for months, and they're saying, no, now's the time where we're finally going to start making it really clear and a bit more difficult for these coaches to be able to do this. You know, we're not going to they could have said the coach is not allowed to talk, right? So I brought this up on Twitter yesterday where I was saying, you know, Dota, LoL, for example, other team games that are in the esports realm, there is a ruling in place that says that the coach is not allowed to communicate with the team. He's not even allowed to be on the stage, for example. When you look at the international, right, there's no sixth man standing in the booths with the teams. If you're talking about League of Legends, I think 2015, I went back to look at the rules, and I think it still carries over today, but it's based off of the 2015 rules, right, the coach can be up there for the pick and ban. He can talk to the players about that, but he needs to be off the stage by the time that pick and ban is over, right? And then the game plays, and he has no say in how the game is played. So you already have these games that you know, are like just bringing back that coaching role, or basically not like fully eliminating it, but eliminating it from the in-game process. Now, I think Valve tried to find a happy medium, basically, where they said, right, we're not going to completely kill the coach role, because taking into account some people have actually told me, right, you know, oh, it's a different game, right? There's many rounds in CSGO, and so there's a lot of snap decisions that can be made round after round. It's not just one game that's played out after the draft. Right. And so I think that's what Valve are basically saying here, is that, okay, we won't completely kill the coach role because things can change over the span of 30 rounds plus if there's overtime, but we don't want them to be that hardcore in-game leader either. And so this is that happy medium that Valve are trying to make work, which is to say that the coach, sure, if you want to rely on him, you can, but it will limit you, it will hinder you in some way. You do need to have some kind of game plan. You need to find some kind of way to work around it now, because we don't want him calling the shots. Now, yeah, that's kind of where I'm like, it's kind of where I'm sitting on it right now. It just seems like Valve, you know, they have a vision for the game. At the end of the day, it is their game, and everything runs off of their game. It is their IP, and so if they have a vision for it, they want to see how things go, or they don't like where it's going, they can make the call. They can absolutely make that call. Now, they didn't go as hard as they could have. I think that's the main thing. I still think that they're trying to figure out a way to make it work. It's not like Starks is going to be out of a job tomorrow because he can't call all 30 rounds. What could happen instead is that teams start to build extended plans or situational plans, right? First 5 rounds of the half, this is going to be our game plan. Okay, there's an adjustment that needs to be made. Maybe use one of those timeouts, quick discussion. Okay, here's the adjustment, and we go from there. I think that there's a lot of room to maneuver around this still. I don't think that this is like the end of the coaching role. It's just going to be, you know, a period of adjustment here, and we're going to have to see exactly, you know, how that pans out and how the teams adjust around it. But I don't think that it's going to go anywhere, and I don't think that Valve are going to, you know, come back on what they've clearly thought is the way that they want their game to be played for the past several months. So it's a bit rambly. Talked a bit about a few things. I don't know. There's a bunch of things that go into this, I think, and it's a bit of a broader topic. But at the end of the day, I think, to summarize, that right now, Valve, in their eyes, they've given the players time to make adjustments. The players haven't made adjustments, or not really. They've kind of kept doing what they wanted. And so Valve have finally decided, right, if you're not going to make the adjustments, we're going to force you to make the adjustments. And there we go. And so we'll see where we go from there. Peace.